A week and a half ago, my mom and dad said that we were going to start watching Game of Thrones as a family. It was optional. They asked who wanted to watch it, and everybody said they would like to watch it. Except for Eden, I think.
I was kind of surprised. I didn't really know that much about Game of Thrones, and from the little that I knew about it, I thought it was like a super long show that I thought my mom and dad didn't really like, but I guess they have watched all of it. And I thought it was just like this entertaining show that people watched. And so I didn't really want to watch it because I didn't understand why we would watch it besides just entertainment. And I thought like it sounded like a waste of time to me. I watched like the first episode with them, and then I kind of stopped watching it. On Sunday we had this talk about why they think that we should watch it as a family, and I think that made me understand a lot more like why they're watching it, and it made me think about maybe reconsidering watching it because I hadn't really watched any of it. I didn't really like, after we watched the first episode, I didn't really like it that much because there was a lot of nudity, which it bothers me, and I felt like it was kind of unnecessary to the story.
Yeah, when they presented the idea or option for us all to watch this as a family, I was a little surprised, but I wasn't opposed to it. I thought it was a lot of time. Like Eden said, I thought it was like a lot of time, and I wasn't sure exactly like what they had in mind in terms of like what benefit they wanted to give or us to get from it. But I also know that they wouldn't be watching it if they didn't see any benefit to it, because I don't know, they're kind of picky about their shows, I feel like. And the nudity, there was a lot of nudity in the beginning. I think it was a little overdone and unnecessary, but I didn't really have like a problem with it. And on Sunday, talking about it, we had this discussion about just how my mom and dad's views have changed on nudity. And we read some Christian blog posts about Game of Thrones, and like I said, I didn't have a problem with it, but I had a problem, or I was kind of like appalled at these Christian blog posts saying like just these things that were like kind of like outrageous and like kind of embarrassingly stupid, I feel like. We also talked about like taking the Bible out of context, and Richard Rohr's opinion on the Bible, which is that it's a story that shows the human's evolution in relationship with God, and how it's changed from the First Testament to the New Testament, or to the Old Testament to the New Testament to now, and things are just gonna look different. They gave the example of polygamy and how God didn't seem to have a problem with it. He didn't focus on that because it was just that day and age. And I don't know. So that was interesting to hear. But yeah, those Christian blog posts were...
Yeah, I was a little surprised at like all the nudity and violence, but with this no rules 2019 thing, we could like watch this anytime we want. But I think it was a lot more value to my mom and dad to watch it as a family, and for them to explain it and to help us understand it. So yeah.
Because I didn't really watch it that much, I'm starting to regret that now, because when the rest of my family is talking about the story, I can't understand it as much or really talk about it. I don't really have a favorite part. I didn't really like watching the parts with a lot of nudity and violence in it as much. But ever since like Sunday, when my mom and dad explained like why we're watching this, I just like, it doesn't bother me as much now that I know the reason behind it.
It's not just for fun.
Yeah. Somebody commented on one of our vlogs and said, Game of Thrones with your kids? Wow, you should look up on Common Sense Media. Definitely not appropriate by any stretch of the imagination for young minds to watch, unless you're hoping to desensitize them to graphic sex and brutal violence. I'm all for openness and not promoting shame around naked bodies and sex, but Game of Thrones is akin to watching soft porn, and with your parents, no less. Eek, that's a little creepy for me.
So you'd rather us watch it alone?
I feel like I can understand this comment, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah, definitely not appropriate by any stretch of the imagination for young minds. This is just, I think, a perspective whatever we were brought up to a little bit when my mom and dad started watching like rated R movies with us, and movies people thought were not kid appropriate. One of the things we talked about was like, this is like kind of hard to compare it to because it's like fantasy, but like for like history, like Schindler's List as an example, like people thought like, wow, you should not be watching that with your kids, blah blah blah. If we were in that time, like in the Holocaust, like would you be like, oh my, like you wouldn't have that option, and that's like the closest option we have to like being in that time. So you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, this isn't kid appropriate. Like it's like, I don't know, I just think that's kind of stupid.
I think the part that says a little creepy makes no sense, because I think it's a lot more weird or creepy for someone to be watching it on their own. And
like a kid.
If you watch our vlogs, I guess it's mostly about doing stuff together. So if it's creepy for you that we're watching a show together, then you don't have to watch our vlogs, because that's sort of what we do.
Take warning from the title.
Definitely not appropriate by any stretch of the imagination for young minds to watch, unless you're hoping to desensitize them to graphic sex and brutal violence.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to learn about this at some point, unless this is like, it's like part of our world, like part of our history, and even some of this happens now. So I don't really think.
Yeah.
I'd rather learn that from my parents than from some other source.
Yeah.
And talk about it with them, and so they help you understand it.
And like being desensitized, I guess, could be seen as good or bad. I don't really think that's happening. Or, yeah, I don't really think you can say like watching that on a screen just makes us immune to that sort of thing. I guess in a way it makes us like not as shocked, but I don't think being shocked is like makes us pure or like shows how good we are.
Also, I think my mom and dad were more trying to focus on the story. And yes, it has a lot of nudity and sex in it, but that's not really the point. Like, I don't know, if you don't want to watch it, you can always skip those parts. But the story was a lot more important to my mom and dad, and I think they really valued that. What's discussion?
It was what we talked about on Sunday.
Okay.